All right, we are back. Free agency continues. Jerry Jeudy was just signed to a big contract by the Browns. As you know, they only had to give up a 5th-round pick and a 6th-round pick in this year's draft. That was a pretty good deal for them, right? They didn't have to give up much, and they can see what they have in Jeudy, but they had to mess that up. They extended him. They gave him a 3-year contract worth up to $58 million with $41 million guaranteed. That is a huge bet on someone who simply hasn't produced enough to earn that in the NFL. He's already been in the NFL for 4 years. He's yet to have a 1,000-yard season, which is honestly not a high bar for a good wide receiver, right? Again, it's Amari Cooper, it's David Njoku, it's either Elijah Moore or Jerry Jeudy as a third target, and it's possible these guys end up canceling each other out for fantasy purposes. Maybe they go out of their way to scheme up Jeudy as their flanker, given they just paid him so much money, which is probably where he should play with Amari as their X and continue to have Elijah Moore as their slot receiver, but we'll see. Not a huge fan of this deal right here from a team who already gave such a ridiculous contract to Deshaun Watson. A lot of this really comes down to whether Watson can show any resemblance of his old self. All right, let's talk about Diontae Johnson real quick. Just want to let you guys know the Steelers lost this trade. Okay, they got back Diontae Jackson. He's okay. Diontae Johnson is that dude. Okay, Diontae Johnson was dealing with a 70% catchable target rate last year. Okay, that ranked 52nd among 57 qualifying wide receivers. George Pickens, he ranked 46th in that category. Okay, that tells you what you need to know about Kenny Pickett and the quarterback situation they had over there in Pittsburgh last year. Adam Thielen, on the other hand, in Carolina, 81.8% catchable target rate. Okay, which ranked 15th. Pretty good. The Panthers had no wide receiver able to separate on the outside, though, right? Thielen was playing on the inside, and that is Diontae Johnson's specialty. And let me just get this out the way right now, before you talk about drops. He corrected that. Only 3 drops last year. Your favorite wide receiver had more. And 2 of those drops in the rain. And back to separation, okay? He is elite in that category, and I'm not being dramatic here, okay? From 2020 to 2023, per ESPN Analytics, during that span, no wide receiver had a higher open rate than Diontae Johnson. Combine that with his reception perception profile, which charts his route running win rate, more support for that cause. Like, just look at this chart. Just look at it. It's beautiful. He has success everywhere. Above 80 percentile against man, against press, against zone. There's nothing to say here except Diontae Johnson is a certified baller. Now, we'll see if Bryce Young can take advantage of this. You know, this is exactly what he needed. And you better believe that a big part of what Dave Canales is going to do for Young and his plan for Young is to get the ball to one of the best separators in the NFL. The Panthers are going to bring in another wide receiver. They should. But Diontae is going to get his targets. 24% target share last year, 27% in 2022, 28% in 2021. And he's going to be undervalued in drafts once again. And it hasn't always worked out for me. Okay, it didn't work out for me last year. The price was cheap, so I got over it pretty easily. But yet again, I am going to have a lot of Diontae Johnson on my fantasy teams this year. And the price is going to be even cheaper if they draft a wide receiver in the early 2nd round. He's going as a wide receiver 43 off the board on Underdog right now. If that's his ceiling price, I'll take that all day long. Calvin Ridley ended up signing with the Titans. What a turn of events for him. We thought he was waiting for the new league year to start so he can re-sign with the Jaguars without them having to give up that 2nd rounder, but he signs with the division rival, the Tennessee Titans, instead. The reason why I like this move for him is because of reasons he said himself. He can do what he does best with a receiver like DeAndre Hopkins on the other side. It's similar to what he had with Julio in Atlanta. You know, those guys playing the X receiver role while he can move around, be the flanker, not have to play on the line, not have to see as much press coverage, and he's going to have that luxury this year. Not a luxury he had last year. According to his reception perception sample, he lined up on the line of scrimmage as the X on almost 79% of his snaps, which is way too much. More free releases expected this year. I'm expecting a higher success rate for him on his routes because of that. Now, we'll see if Will Levis can make it happen, but having Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins to throw to in a more modern offense is a pretty good situation for him. So maybe we see a step forward for him as well. As of right now, Ridley is being taken ahead of Hopkins, and I do think that's the right move in fantasy drafts. I think he'll be open more. I think I'd rather bet on an age 29 season for Ridley than the age 32 season for DeAndre Hopkins. And by the way, I'm also low-key interested to see what Treylon Burks can potentially do out of the slot. That's his natural position. not the outside. They try to deploy him on the outside when he first got into the league. So I'm hoping he can get some opportunity in that role. We'll see how it works out for him. A little bit of a low-key move. Rondale Moore traded to the Falcons for Desmond Ridder. No-brainer trade for the Falcons. Desmond Ridder, donezo. Rondale Moore has shown he could be a solid slot receiver in this league. You know, he is good after the catch ability. He can take handoffs out of the backfield. The Falcons didn't have a wide receiver that fit into the slot besides Kyle Pitts. So they have their field stretcher in Darnell Mooney. They have Drake London as their X. The slot has obviously been a very productive position for this Sean McVay offense that's being brought over. So I'll definitely be taking my shots on him. I think all three of these receivers, plus Kyle Pitts, they all have a chance to be fantasy relevant. So we'll see how it shakes out. But, you know, I'll be taking my shots on Darnell Mooney. I'll be taking my shots on Rondale Moore. It could work out with Kirk Cousins at the helm. The Washington Commanders gave up on Sam Howell already, despite, you know, the decent, numbers that he put up, the raw numbers that he put up. He was traded to the Seahawks. Geno Smith is still the starter in Seattle, but it's worth noting that this is a brand new coaching staff. They did have a high grade on him coming out of the NFL draft, and Geno has a very high contract number for 2025, around $25 million. So if Howell can sit behind Geno this year, learn the offense, maybe he takes over next year, maybe, possible. This also means that Washington is most definitely taking a quarterback with the number 2 overall pick in this year's draft. We talked about Joe Mixon getting traded to the Texans last week, and I'll get to his fantasy value here in a second because I do think that increased significantly with his 3-year, $27 million contract, another $13 million guaranteed. Why? That's $9 million average annual value, which is 7th highest in the NFL among running backs. Just keep Devin Singletary for cheaper at that point, right? And then go draft a running back. You can get a 3rd-round running back, rookie, for less than $2 million a year, and you have that running back for their prime years. That means you can draft the Trey Benson, you can draft the Jonathan Brooks. Sure, keep a veteran around while those guys get acclimated early on, like a Devin Singletary. But this was just a head-scratching move to me for a running back clearly on the decline and going into his age 28 season. I mean, Derrick Henry got a 2-year, $16 million deal with only $9 million guaranteed. Like, how does he get a worse deal as a free agent than Mixon, who's already under contract? But either way, as long as he stays healthy, Mixon is basically locked in as a volume-based high-end RB2 on a good offense. I think if he's available in the 4th round, that's where I'm going to start considering him in redraft. But I can totally see myself preferring some of those wide receivers around that range. Curtis Samuel going to the Bills is one of my favorite free agent signings in the offseason. He's still being drafted outside the top 60 wide receivers on Underdog almost a week later, and he'll continue to be undervalued. He should be drafted as a top 40 wide receiver, in my opinion. And it doesn't matter where he plays. He can play inside. He can play that flanker role on the outside, whatever. He isn't just a slot receiver. He is a huge upgrade to Gabe Davis. I'm a Khalil Shakir guy, but he is a better wide receiver than Shakir right now. More dynamic, more versatile, faster. He's better after the catch, and he's a better route runner, too. If you look at his latest charting on reception perception, it's impressive. 82nd percentile against man coverage. Not what you'd expect from him. But that's been the story of his career. Underutilized with non-ideal circumstances and quarterback situations. The Bills now have someone besides Stephon Diggs who can separate. He's going to be playing under Joe Brady, who was his offensive coordinator in Carolina when Samuel had his best year in 2020. More than 1,000 yards from scrimmage. That was alongside DJ Moore getting the ball thrown from Teddy Bridgewater. This time he's alongside Stephon Diggs with Josh Allen. Now, it's very possible they go more 11 personnel where he's their Z, Shakir's their slot, Diggs is the X. That way you can have all those guys plus Dalton Kincaid on the field. The question is, how often will they want Dawson Knox on the field, right? Hopefully not too often. Don't want to see a whole lot of 12 personnel with the wide receivers that they have. Keenan Allen was traded to the Bears. What a landing spot for Caleb Williams now, right? You get to throw to DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, not to mention Cole Kmet and DeAndre Swift. I talked about how much I like the Shane Waldron hire as OC as well. Looking good for Caleb to make an impact in year 1, potentially, even for fantasy. I can see Keenan Allen being relied on a ton by Williams early on. He's not going to be running those, routes deep down the field. So it'll allow Williams, to get rid of the ball quickly when he needs to, and he'll have more further down the field to do his thing. I'm not sure Keenan's going to get that elite 28% targets per route run he got last year alongside DJ Moore this year, but I'm fully expecting him to average, 5, 6, maybe 7 catches a game, like somewhere, in that range in his healthy games. It is worth noting that he missed 4 games last year, 7 games the year prior, and he is going into his age 32 season. It's also worth noting slot receivers tend to be productive further along into their careers than perimeter wide receivers, so keep that in mind. Both of these guys can end up, both him and Moore, as top 20 options this year, but we'll see if either of them can be that clear guy to be close to the top 12 option that they both were this past season. I think Hollywood Brown going to the Chiefs is a very good complement to what the Chiefs have on offense already with what Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice do well. Among all wide receivers and tight ends with 100 or more targets last year, Kelce ranked 5th lowest in average depth of target. Rashee ranked lowest among all wide receivers. His ADOT was sitting at 5.2. So he was targeted short, but he made a ton happen after the catch, especially against zone coverage. As a matter of fact, 74% of his receiving yards came against zone coverage last year. Now enter Hollywood, who is best at doing other things. According to his latest reception perception profile, he thrives on those intermediate routes a little further down the field, on those dig and out routes. It's going to force safeties to account for that, and it's going to give these guys underneath even more room. There was zero threat further down the field last year, and now they have that, okay? Hollywood's success on post routes have also been very good, so there is some vertical aspect to his game that will allow for some big plays. Mahomes was one of the least successful quarterbacks throwing past 20 yards last year. I think this will help that a ton, so there is some potential for some big plays for Hollywood, but the intermediate stuff between 10 and 20 yards is what I'm more interested in when it comes to Hollywood, because Mahomes has a lot of success in that area of the field. 4th in adjusted completion percentage last year, 2nd in catchable throw percentage, 3rd in yards per attempt to that area of the field. But here's the thing. He was only able to throw to that area of the field on 17.4% of his throws, which ranked 30th of 32 qualifying quarterbacks. Having Hollywood there is going to allow him to do more of what he does well. All right, so another trade to talk about, Vikings trading up with the Texans to get another first-round pick. They now own 11 and 23 in the first round, which is enough to trade into the top 5 alone. The question is, who do they trade with, right? The Commanders are likely taking a quarterback at 2. It's possible the Patriots trade down to fill all the needs they have. So Vikings trading up to 3 is a possibility. The Cardinals will likely stay put to grab Marvin Harrison, but you never know, right? They can trade down as well and grab another receiver, but maybe, acquire a pick or 2 by moving down, right? The Chargers are at 5, but, will the Vikings quarterback of choice be off the board? You know what I'm saying? Like, if their guy is J.J. McCarthy, it's possible that they do, in fact, have to get in front of the Giants who pick at 6, right? So at this point, it seems like the 2 potential trade partners to me are the Patriots at 3, even though they need a quarterback. I feel like they might still be able to trade down and then later on grab Bo Nix or Michael Penix or something like that. Or even J.J. McCarthy, if he ends up falling, towards the end of the top 10, maybe they trade back into the top 10 with the picks that they acquired, from a team like the Vikings. All right, so we got even more trades. Now, Kenny Pickett, he was traded to the Eagles after Russell Wilson was brought in. Justin Fields was then brought into Pittsburgh as well. So we now have Russell Wilson and Justin Fields as the Steelers 1-2 this year at the quarterback position, and Pickett is now the backup behind Jalen Hurts. I think what the Steelers did here was so underrated. Like, they might not have their quarterback of the future right now, or they might mold Justin Fields into that guy. It's very possible, but the fact that they brought in both of these guys, Russell Wilson on a $1.2 million deal, obviously you have the Broncos paying him his actual salary this year, and then you have Fields coming in for only a 6th-round pick. At best, a 4th rounder if he ends up being the main guy this year. Combined, these 2 quarterbacks are being paid less than $5 million total by Pittsburgh. Not bad to see what you have, right? Especially in Justin Fields, who I think can thrive in Arthur Smith's run-first offense. I don't think Russell Wilson is the clear guy either. Like, he's an accurate quarterback and can manage the game fine right now, but he has a lot of the same drawbacks that Fields has. Late on reads, taking too many sacks, but Fields provides an obvious playmaking ability that Russ doesn't have at this point of his career. I think Fields isn't like the worst passer in the NFL, like a lot of people might say he is. I think he's a little bit low average in the pass game, and the numbers from last year kind of support that, right? 19th in turnover-worthy throw rate, 18th in adjusted completion percentage, 17th in completion percentage over expectation, 18th in yards per attempt. But then he makes big plays with his legs, obviously, and he's 8th in big-time throw percentage, right? So that big play ability is there, that dynamic ability is there. We'll see what happens, but I think this was a very sharp way of rehauling and upgrading that quarterback room in Pittsburgh, even if it's a short-term thing. Now, we got 2 running backs that signed on Monday. Alexander Mattison signed with the Raiders. Rico Dowdle, who was Tony Pollard's backup in Dallas last year, re-signed with the Cowboys. he's their RB1 right now because it seems very obvious that they will try and draft one of these top backs in this year's class. I can totally see them grabbing Trey Benson and Jonathan Brooks in the 3rd round. Now, as far as Mattison goes, I think this is still Zamir White's backfield for now. Not sure Mattison really puts a dent into that a whole lot. I think this is just more for depth purposes. It is possible that he competes, he has a role, but the way White ended the season, I think he can be their guy as long as they don't draft someone in the 3rd or 4th round this year. And it really depends on who that someone is. I think, Zamir White is a solid running back, but I don't think he's anything special. He was a day 3 pick himself, and betting on running backs in this type of situation at this time of year is a dangerous move, okay? But as of now, I don't think Mattison puts a dent in his starting role for now, at least. It all depends on what these coaches see in camp at the end of the day, right? Thanks for joining me, guys. See you next time. Peace.